Hey guys, David here. It's time for another comic book movie review. Hey, look what else is new. And this time it is for one of the most skeptical films that a lot of people have been talking about recently, because after Civil War, we were on a high. We were like, oh my god, we're so stoked for Apocalypse. And then reviews started to trickle in and everyone's like, oh no, what's going on? No. This was gonna be it. This is, we were just doing so well. Please don't break our hearts after Civil War. But the next film in the X-Men franchise has arrived in the form of X-Men Apocalypse. The cast from at least half of the cast of Days of Future Past returns with James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and introducing, even though he's a very a heavily stated actor, Oscar Isaac comes in as Apocalypse, who is pretty much going to just destroy the world in X-Men Apocalypse. And having seen the movie, I can honestly say that X-Men Apocalypse is pretty much completely 100% not that bad, actually. I don't know where those reviews came from. I mean, I kept seeing things like, oh my god, does X-Men Apocalypse suck? I can honestly say that it does not suck. I think this not a bad... Here's the thing. Here's the deal. The best way that I can analogize my feelings towards X-Men Apocalypse in a much more condensed form that's not going to take up too much time is that X-Men Apocalypse is indeed that movie that the studio needs to make to keep the rights of the X-Men comic books, the X-Men characters, Apocalypse, Professor Xavier, Wolverine, all of them. This felt like that obligatory movie that the studio needs to make. However, unlike Fantastic Four or any other property, 20th Century Fox lucks out by having talented people behind the movie, such as their cast with James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, Oscar nominees and winners, as well as a very talented crew with Bryan Singer returning to direct and Simon Kinberg overseeing the script. Because of that, they actually try. They actually are willing to put effort into their film and not just half-ass it. And that's what we get with X-Men Apocalypse. A really, I won't say really good, but a pretty good comic book superhero movie. But a pretty standard X-Men movie. Because when it comes down to it, you know how when you're watching a TV show, and especially this is the main deal with shows that go beyond a 12-episode, 13-episode season, where they start to get into 16-episode or 22-episode territory, which is very common with network television shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Gotham, Supergirl, The Flash. I'm mainly orienting it around comic book superhero shows because this is, in fact, a superhero film. This feels like one of those episodes that you recognize as being a good episode. It wasn't written bad. It wasn't directed bad. It was pretty well acted. Okay, you liked it. But you recognize that it's an episode that they had to throw in there to extend that 22-episode full season schedule, where you can easily look at certain episodes and be like, okay, that could have been taken out, that could have been taken out, that could have been taken out. And you could have a much more cohesive story. And X-Men Apocalypse is that film where it's a very standard template of a superhero film where you got this bad guy, in this case Apocalypse, rises up, he gathers his like they said in this movie, his horsemen, and that prompts the heroes to bring their team together and go up against the bad guy, and that makes up the bulk of the film. And because of that, we simply just go from one scene to the next of either Xavier or Apocalypse recruiting their next member. And because of this, it feels like a very routine film where they just need to get to that climax and be like, okay, here's the bad guy. However, because of the talent behind the performances and the writing, it does have its moments that are pretty damn good. That I'm like, oh my god, that was a really great scene. And if we're to go ahead and stay with the things that did work with this movie, it would be that some of the performances are great. James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, our trifecta of veteran actors here in this movie do a phenomenal job, especially Michael Fassbender during the earlier part of the film, where it really does put a magnifying glass on Magneto and what he's been doing ever since Days of Future Past, and it's one of the big highlights of the film. Before I get into why this doesn't last very long, let me just go ahead and talk about some more good out of the movie, and that is that there are some great action sequences where you can tell that one of the big focus of Apocalypse, or not Apocalypse the character, but the movie, is to highlight some of the superpowers behind the X-Men and what makes mutant life so awesome and why they should embrace these powers rather than think of them as a curse. And one of the perfect ciphers to kind of carry this theme along is Cyclops in this movie, who earns his powers early on, and he gets enrolled into the school. And this serves as the theme of how X-Men Apocalypse really does center around the superpowers and how they're used for either good or evil, and how they can be used as a team to henceforth build the X-Men team upon that foundation. And I enjoy that theme about the film. Not only that, but also made for some cool action sequences. Quicksilver, back at it again with a definite highlight out of the film. I think visually, the scene with Quicksilver in this one does in fact top that of Days of Future Past, but it does kind of raise the question as to why they don't just carry this guy all over the place. And it does look like they will be, but I'll save that for my spoiler cast that I will be doing on my SoundCloud, which I'll plug at the end of the review. But for now, I'm keeping this as short as possible and say that this did have some bright spots throughout the film, from the action sequences to the performance, as well as like little pockets, little scenes that really did highlight some of the best things about the X-Men franchise, to the point where even Singer acknowledges the contribution by Matthew Vaughn with X-Men First Class in this film. And I thought that was a really class act, and I really appreciated that. It's one of the things that I loved about the most in this film. However, what really enforces my emphasis on the whole, like, this does feel like that filler episode that is good, but does feel like something that needed to happen in order to keep contracts in check, is that this film does feel a little bloated in some parts, particularly in the middle during the second act, where there's this segment that I think could have been easily not only cut out of the film, but cut out of the script entirely. Like, this should have been something that should have been edited way before they even started filming, because this movie is, I believe, the longest X-Men film. I might be wrong about that, but I think this is the longest X-Men movie, being about 7 minutes shy of 2.5 hours, and they could have easily cut out like 20, almost 30 minutes out of that middle segment during this little detour that our characters take, that, while cool in terms of its execution, because you see some of the superpowers take effect, and it does highlight a little something that has been kept under wraps except for one particular trailer that definitely prepares us for what's to come in a very berserk type of way. But pulling yourself back and looking at it in the grand picture of things, it could have been cut out, because it does feel like a detour from the main thing, to the point where we do cut back to our main thing, our main story with Apocalypse. I'm like, I did feel a little daunting, because we cut and I'm like, oh yeah, this is what's happening, right? Okay, yeah, I gotta be honest, I forgot for like 10 or 15 minutes. And so because of this bloatiness and because of how we're moving from point A to point B, some characters do get kind of overlooked, and the whole point of the X-Men is to work as a team. But of course, one of the things that makes us invested in this team is getting to know some of those team members, and sadly some of them are quite overlooked, not only from Xavier's team but also from Apocalypse's Force Horsemen, where I'm like, okay, I honestly don't care who goes and who stays by the end of this whole thing, because some characters are given little snippets of scenes and we just move on from there, and we never get to know any of them from either side. So there's no, visually some scenes are cool, and watching these powers take effect from beginning to end, especially during the beginning part. The way this movie opens is very intriguing and very cool, and it hooked me. But from a storytelling point of view, it does overlook some of its characters, and with a movie like X-Men, where you're dealing with a team and you have to care about a team, that's kind of a problem. And I hate to compare and contrast here with their older brother, because it really does feel like that. But that's something that Civil War was able to handle really well, is to give every character that scene that really fleshed them out. And Apocalypse, the movie, concentrates so much on some of our bigger players like Xavier and Mystique and Magneto, that we do look over some other characters that should have had bigger development and bigger analyzation, and therefore we could have cared about them more. Which brings me to our big baddie this time around, X-Men I've been calling the movie Apocalypse, and now that I want to call Apocalypse by his name, I call him by the movie. Apocalypse. Oscar Isaac did very well. He wasn't Ivan Ooze like everybody was talking about. Ivan Ooze from Power Rangers. He, as an actor, was good, but writing-wise, again, I almost wasn't able to differentiate him from some of those weaker MCU villains that everybody would often complain about, especially Ronan the Accuser. He reminded me a bit of him, yelling like, "I will conquer," like, okay, I would understand where you're coming from, dude, if I got to see that. And you do see a snippet of that, but there's two little issues. There's that, where we don't see what his deal is. He says like one or two lines of dialogue early on in the movie, and we have that very intriguing opening that has him, again, I don't want to talk about too much. I want to save stuff up for my spoiler cast, but the way this movie opens with his origin, it was very interesting, but I was left with more questions than answers as to where he came from, as well as his motivation, and furthermore, his powers. I took away from this movie that Apocalypse's biggest superhero power was that of being the world's best costume designer. Oh, Magneto, your outfit is just not complete. Oh my god. Darling, you really need to cover that head off. Here, let me give you this helmet. Boom. Oh my god. Can you say end of the world with this? Darn, it's amazing. So all of these issues with Apocalypse, both the character and the movie, ended up in a antagonist and respectively a film that is good because it does have this level of charm to the way it's filmed and to the way it's acted by our ensemble cast, as well as the way that it's written, that it does make me like it more than dislike it. But I do recognize that it does feel like that film that is made to keep the rights. The studio, however, lucked out that some of the people involved with this project do care enough about the property and about our heroes here that you do end up liking the film. It does, however, have its fair share of issues of keeping it from being not only one of the best superhero films, but also being one of the best X-Men films. And for that, I give X-Men Apocalypse, I'm gonna have to go with a low 8 out of 10. Still, however, I recommend checking it out if you're a comic book fan or if you're an X-Men fan. If you're an X-Men fan, you're going to see it regardless. And I can confidently say that you're going to walk away with it, not scratching your head, not questioning you're going to question maybe a couple of things. But still, you're going to be looking forward to the next one. And there's going to be things that you're going to take away from this film that you're going to carry on over to the next one. And me, myself, am expecting the filmmakers to do just the same with our next entry in the X-Men universe. So, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys thought of X-Men Apocalypse. Keep it clean because this is a spoiler-free review. But if you're looking forward to hearing my thoughts on all of this movie, spoilers and all, please follow me on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/DarkSpiderDavid. I'll be doing a spoiler cast where I'm going to be picking apart all the tiny little details. And trust me, there's a number of things in this movie that I do want to put together in the list and go through all of them, all in one fell spoilery swoop, whatever. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time. Take care.